Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
I grew up thinking everything was normal. My parents loved me, or at least I thought they did. My stepdad was my dad as far as I knew. I had 3 younger siblings. We weren't rich, but we got by. Things started changing around 5th grade. I'd always done well in school. Really well. My parents sent me to this fancy private school with amazing test scores. All my friends and I got accepted to the same private middle school. I was so excited. Then my parents sat me down one evening and explained that they couldn't afford the tuition anymore. They told me they had to withdraw my younger brother and younger sister's applications to my elementary school for the same reason. They said I'd be going to public middle school instead. Near the end of 5th grade, we started learning about genetics in science class. I remember that lesson so clearly because I looked nothing like my parents. Not one feature matched. I started asking my teacher difficult questions about inheritance and which traits were dominant. She answered a few of my questions, then realized where I was heading with this line of questioning and shut the conversation down immediately. That summer, I read everything I could find about genetics. Then I did something stupid. I went to my stepdad and asked him directly if I was adopted. The conversation escalated fast. I don't remember everything that was said, but it got heated quickly. He hit me so hard he broke my right cheekbone. My mom rushed me to the hospital. On the way there, they coached me to say I'd been hit by a doorknob accidentally. I had to repeat the same story to Child Protective Services when they showed up. A week after getting home from the hospital, my parents finally told me the truth. They explained that my stepdad wasn't my biological father. My mom said she'd been dating someone in college who she described as a real jerk. When she found out she was pregnant, he left her. My stepdad stepped up and did everything he could, even putting his name on my birth certificate. They explained that when I confronted my stepdad about being adopted, it really hurt him, and he lashed out in anger. They both admitted it was wrong and asked for forgiveness. I gave it to them. Things seemed normal again, but I started noticing patterns I'd missed before. When my siblings needed something, my parents dropped everything. When I needed something, they told me to figure it out myself. For birthdays, I got a hug from my mom. No cake after I turned 6. My siblings got full parties. My stepdad came home from work and ignored me. I was this nerdy kid who wanted to visit museums and had zero interest in sports. My brothers were the opposite. He spent all his free time playing and watching sports with them. If my brothers wanted to see a game, he'd move heaven and earth to take them. He'd usually drag me along too. If I wanted to see the new fossil exhibit at the museum, there was no way. He was always busy. Once he told me flatly that a basketball game had eaten up my entire entertainment budget for the month. At that same game, when he saw I brought my copy of a science book, he threw it out. He said I shouldn't bring a book to a family event. This wasn't new behavior. After the truth came out, it had been happening for years. I just assumed it was because I was the oldest. Middle school was terrible. I was an introvert who preferred reading to socializing. At my old school, I'd been the odd one out, but I had friends. At public school, I got singled out and bullied immediately. My mental health crashed. My parents refused to intervene. They said it would toughen me up. My stepdad explained that he'd been bullied when he was younger, but he fought back and those kids became his friends. He said that's just how guys become friends. The faculty wasn't helpful either. I tried fighting back once. 3 kids ganged up on me. I got suspended for 3 days. The only friend I made was an older student. He was 3 years ahead of me, but he took sympathy on me and protected me from my bullies. Over the next 3 years, things at home got worse. My younger siblings had picked up on my parents' apathy and my declining confidence. They started harassing me. If they wanted something I had, they took it. They called me names and played pranks. When I told my parents, they said I needed to lighten up. My parents became extremely harsh. I got beaten from time to time. Near the end of my first year of middle school, I came home from the library and saw a letter from the middle school I'd wanted to attend. I opened it. It was declining the application for my younger brother and younger sister. I didn't see anything for me, so I asked my parents about it. They punished me for opening their mail. When I pushed the issue further, they told me my younger siblings did more to deserve going to that middle school than I did. I had near perfect grades at the time. When I argued that if they could afford to send my siblings, I should be able to go too, I got beaten for talking back and opening their mail. I tried self-harm during this time. Whenever I did, things would briefly improve. I become the center of my parents' world. Teachers would stop the bullying. Some kids at school would be friendly. After a week, everything would slide back. The only person there for me was my friend from school. Early in 8th grade, I broke down and told him about my biological father. I'd been having thoughts about why he abandoned me when he found out my mom was pregnant, how it was partially his fault my life was like this. During my venting, I revealed that my mom had recently let my biological dad's first and last name slip, so I knew it. My friend offered to help me research him. That day, we went to his house and started looking him up online. My biological father was a college professor at a research university about 200 miles away. He was married. I had another younger sister and his wife was pregnant. That night, we came up with a plan to go see him. The next day, I got off the bus at school, went straight to the high school parking lot, got in my friend's car, and we left. We arrived at the university around noon. My friend went to the student center and asked which office my biological father worked at and got directions. We went there. He was gone for lunch. When he came back about an hour later, he saw us sitting outside his office and asked who we were. I asked him to confirm his name, then asked if he knew my mom. When he confirmed both, I told him who I was and that I believed I was his son. My friend had coached me on what to say beforehand. My biological father immediately hugged me warmly. He kept saying, "Oh my God," over and over. He brought us into his office to talk and canceled his classes for the day. My friend left after that. My biological father took me to his home and introduced me to his family. His wife was surprised. She knew he had a son somewhere, but a 13-year-old appearing out of nowhere was quite a shock. They sat me down and explained what had actually happened all those years ago. According to him, he'd been dating my mom during their senior year of college when she told him she was pregnant. They were having relationship problems at the time. He suspected she was cheating on him. He was planning to break up with her when she told him about the pregnancy. He honestly suspected it was an attempt to keep them together. He told her he'd be willing to do a paternity test and co-parent, but that he refused to stay in a relationship with her. It turned out my mom had been cheating with my stepdad. When my stepdad had a much more positive response to the pregnancy news, she cut contact with my biological father completely. When my biological father married his wife, he told her that he might have had a child out there. They decided to look my mom up on social media and saw a few pictures of me. I have no significant features matching my mom or stepdad. It turns out I look almost identical to my biological father. He knew immediately when he saw those photos. He'd reached out to my mom through social media, but she immediately blocked him. He'd considered getting a lawyer but figured it would be nearly impossible to get custody or even visitation was at the paternity test, which my mom and stepdad could have blocked. I told him everything my mom and stepdad had put me through. I told him about the favoritism, the beatings, the neglect, the broken cheekbone, all of it. When I finished, I was crying. His wife was consoling me and holding me. My biological father stood up wordlessly, went into the next room, and I heard him call a lawyer. Then he called the police. The police, social services, and child protective services all showed up and took me into custody. I was removed from my mom's and stepdad's custody and became a temporary ward of the state. A paternity test was ordered and it confirmed everything my biological father had told me. I was placed with my biological father and his wife. I was given a restraining order against my mom and stepdad that would last until I turned 18. Everything wasn't perfect after that. Guess I caused some strain on their marriage because my biological father immediately favored me over my half-siblings. They recovered and placed sensible boundaries in the household. I was enrolled in a much better school where I made real friends. I never forgot my friend from middle school. We stayed in contact, though the distance made it less consistent. We still talk regularly. He's doing well. After high school, he became an underwater welder for an oil company, which apparently pays really well. We've met for drinks to catch up several times over the years. I asked him once why he protected me back in middle school. He said he wasn't entirely sure, but when he saw me getting bullied, something just snapped inside him. He said he kinda saw me as someone who needed a big brother figure in his life. He told me it was just the right thing to do. After high school, I went to college and was fairly popular. My confidence had been completely rebuilt. I majored in biology and minored in geology. I'm currently a doctoral student working in paleontology. I love it. I get to go on university-sponsored digs, normally in the United States, but last year I went to South Africa and Namibia. My mom and stepdad reached out to me a few months ago. They were trying to get me to tutor my younger brother and younger sister. My sister had dropped out of college years ago because it was too difficult for her. She wanted to go back and finish her program. My younger brother wants to get into a good college next year but doesn't have the grades. They wanted me to help him study for standardized tests. During that conversation, my heart was beating out of control. I had difficulty breathing. I'm certain it was a panic attack, but I'd never had one before. I just hung up on my mom and sat on the couch trying to breathe. The next day, I started receiving texts from my mom's kids asking for help with their studies. I blocked all their numbers. I didn't hear from them until I received a barrage of emails on my university email address. They were apologizing for how they treated me when I was younger and said they wanted to fix things so we could be a family again. I wanted to send an email back telling them I wanted no further contact, that even hearing from them was causing a traumatic response over a decade later, that I felt the only reason they were reaching out was because they wanted a free tutor. I never sent it. Instead, I just blocked them. In April, I went on a dig in Texas and received a call from the police. They told me they'd been called to my apartment because they'd been told someone had broken in. It was my younger brother trying to contact me. I told the police he wasn't supposed to be there and that I wanted trespassing charges pressed. Since it was a first offense, he was able to plea bargain it down to 100 hours of community service. I got back home at the end of May. I haven't heard from them since. I think they finally got the idea and stopped contacting me. I have a strong relationship with my biological father now. We've spent a long time building that relationship and making up for lost time. I have a good relationship with my younger half-siblings from him and his wife. I play with them and spend time with them. Though there's a fairly big age gap between us, his wife and I are on good terms. I'm not sure how to describe our relationship exactly, but I'd say that while she didn't completely replace the role of a mom in my life, she did become a motherly figure to me. After initially writing this and proofreading it, recalling the mistreatment I suffered made me feel extremely anxious. I think I may have some suppressed trauma and will be looking to get therapy soon. I grew up in this town, went to school here, came back after law school to set up my practice. For 15 years, I handled wills, property disputes, the occasional divorce, nothing too dramatic. My office sat on Main Street between the hardware store and the coffee shop, and most days I could walk to work in 10 minutes flat. The Homeowners Association had been around for decades, managing our neighborhood of about 200 homes. They handled the usual stuff like maintaining the community pool, organizing the annual block party, keeping the entrance landscaping nice. Most people paid their dues and never thought much about it. That changed about 6 months ago when my neighbor knocked on my door one evening. He looked worried, holding a stack of papers in his hand. He asked if I had a minute because he needed to run something by me. I told him to come in and asked what was going on. He started explaining that the HOA fees had gone up 3 times in the past 2 years, but he did not see any improvements in the neighborhood. The park equipment was still broken, the roads had more potholes than ever, and the pool had not been resurfaced like they promised. I took the papers from him and started looking through them. The numbers did seem off. The fees had increased significantly, but there was no detailed breakdown of where the money was going. I asked if he had talked to the board about this. He said he tried, but Karen just gave vague answers about rising costs and necessary expenses. It did not add up. That conversation stuck with me. Over the next few days, 3 more neighbors reached out with similar concerns. They had all tried to get answers from Karen and had been brushed off or given non-answers that did not satisfy anyone. I decided to look into it myself. As a lawyer, I had access to certain public records, and the HOA was required to maintain transparent financial documentation for its members. I requested copies of the financial records, meeting minutes, and bank statements for the past 5 years. What I found made my stomach turn. There were fake invoices for work that had never been done, money transferred to shell companies that did not seem to exist, community project funds that had been approved but never spent on their intended purpose. The park renovation that was supposed to cost $15,000 had only $5,000 actually spent on it, with the rest disappearing into accounts I could not trace. Karen had been systematically stealing from the association for at least 4 years, maybe longer. The total amount was well over $200,000. I spent 3 weeks documenting everything, building a case that would be impossible to dispute. I made copies of all the evidence and stored them in multiple locations. Then I decided it was time to confront her directly. Her office was in the community center, a small building near the neighborhood entrance. I walked in on a Tuesday afternoon with a folder full of documents, my heart pounding but my resolve firm. I told her we needed to talk. She seemed surprised to see me and asked what she could do for me. I explained that I had been looking into the association's finances and found some discrepancies. Her smile faltered as she asked what I meant. I spread the documents across her desk, methodical and calm. Bank statements showing transfers to suspicious accounts, meeting minutes that had been altered, invoices for services never rendered. She immediately claimed they were lies and accused me of making it up. I told her it was all documented right there. Bank statements, doctored meeting minutes, fake invoices. She had been stealing from us for years. She stood up and suggested I leave before she called security. I told her I was not going anywhere. This needed to stop. I was giving her a chance to come clean before I took this to the authorities. She had until Thursday. She leaned over the desk and told me I was making a big mistake. I had no idea who I was messing with. I left feeling unsettled but determined. I had given her an ultimatum, and I meant it. If she did not confess by Thursday, I was taking everything to the police. The next few days felt strange. I went about my normal routine, seeing clients, filing paperwork, grabbing lunch at the diner down the street. But something felt off. I noticed the same car parked across from my office 2 days in a row. A man in sunglasses who seemed to be watching my building. Wednesday night, I stayed late at the office finishing up some contracts. By the time I left, it was past 9 o'clock, and the streets were mostly empty. The drive home took me through a stretch of road on the edge of town, poorly lit and surrounded by empty fields. When I approached that dark section, I noticed a car parked on the shoulder with its hazards on. My first instinct was to stop and help, but something made me hesitate. I slowed down instead of pulling over. That hesitation saved my life. Movement in the shadows caught my eye just as the first gunshot rang out. My windshield exploded, glass spraying everywhere. More shots followed, hitting the hood, the door, the side mirror. I slammed my foot on the gas pedal. The car lurched forward as I ducked low in my seat, steering blindly while bullets tore through metal and shattered what was left of my windows. Pain flared in my arm and something warm ran down the side of my face, but I did not stop. I do not remember much about the drive after that. Pure adrenaline carried me to the police station, my hands shaking so badly I could barely grip the steering wheel. The police found the hitmen by morning. 2 career criminals with connections to organized crime. They talked quickly once they were in custody, probably hoping for a deal. A detective came to see me in the hospital room where they were treating my wounds. He told me they had some information about my attack. It seemed it was ordered by Karen. I was stunned. I asked if he meant Karen, the HOA president. He confirmed it was the same person. Apparently she had hired these guys to take care of me. I told him I could not believe she would go this far. I knew she was corrupt, but attempted murder seemed extreme. He explained that people do desperate things when they are cornered. They were bringing her in for questioning right away. The trial lasted 3 weeks. News vans lined the courthouse steps every day. I testified about my investigation, the confrontation, and the attack. The evidence was overwhelming. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. The judge found Karen guilty on all charges and sentenced her to 25 years in state prison. I will never forget the look on her face when the verdict was read. She seemed to age years in those few moments, her carefully maintained facade crumbling away. The neighborhood elected new leadership within a month. We implemented new financial controls, required dual signatures on all checks, and hired an independent auditor to review everything quarterly. It was not easy. Some people were angry that they had not noticed what was happening right under their noses. Others were embarrassed that they had defended Karen for so long. But slowly, things started to improve. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.